The Almost Perfect Podcast.
Welcome to the Almost Perfect Podcast, a celebration of fuck-ups, failures, and falling flat on your face. This is a podcast that believes you can learn from experience, but that experience doesn't have to be your own. Hi, I'm Bob Perfect, and I'm a functional fuck-up. Let's learn from somebody else's mistakes. And today we are learning from Fortune Shumba. Now, Fortune is a musician and a brand strategist who has lived quite a fucking life, as you are going to find out in the next hour and a half or so. We chatted about a hell of a lot. I actually should probably just lay out some trigger warnings right here. We do talk about some very heavy things. Fortune is very open and quite casual in some instances about things like suicide and rape, and yeah, just letting you know that is some of the stuff that we talk about, but it's such a small part of the conversation in reality. We mostly talk about Fortune's evolution as a musician, as a person, as a woman, and it's a really informative and interesting chat that I think you'll learn a lot from, and I certainly learned a lot from. And I think even Fortune learned a little bit, at least, from it. So I'm super grateful that she gave me her time and that we chatted about so much and just got to hear the real stories behind the music, because I felt a certain way and didn't really know what it was all about. And once you find out the real story, it really makes the music matter even more. So I'm grateful for that. And that's something like I love genuinely about it's why I'm like got into music journalism in the first place, is because I want to know the stories. I want to know why the song was made. Yes, I know we have our interpretations as audience members and that, but I've always been fascinated with like the inner workings of bands and like how songs come about, and how they top the charts, or how they impact other artists, or who they're about, and all of those sorts of things. So this is a conversation where we get quite a bit of that from Fortune. So I'm coming to you from Joburg. I'm coming to you from my mom's lounge, so you might hear some clocks in the background. You might hear a cat or a dog or two. There's like 7 animals in this house at the moment, but I'm up here to help my mom move. We're going to be doing that the day that you're hearing this. I'm actually going to be packing boxes and unpacking boxes and moving them from one place to another. So it's kind of interesting being up here again. It's been a long time since I've seen my mom. It's been a year and a half at least, since basically December 2019. So January 2020 was the last time I saw my mom. And I'm really grateful that I have this experience and this time. And it's weird, the plane flight wasn't as nerve-wracking, although it like just made me laugh at like everyone who's like, oh, the taxis. I'm like, bro, like planes are just the taxis of the sky. Let's be honest with ourselves here. You're packed on like sardines. It's jam-packed. It's super not, COVID compliancy. In my mind, they're trying and they're doing things like not serving you food and all of those kind of things, to prevent interactions. And I do appreciate that. And I think, they obviously also scoring a little out of it. But I guess the airlines are trying. Like, it's not like they can realistically do much about it. But it did just make me laugh about the fact that, you have some of your commentators out there who are just like, oh, the taxis, but I can't go to the gym. It's just like, bro, like, what do you even mean? Like, we are crammed in on airplanes right next to each other. So, But having had COVID fairly recently, I'd like assume, I don't assume, like I have read a little. Like, I know I've got some antibodies. It's not like I can't get COVID again, but this soon is pretty unlikely. So I wasn't as stressed as I might have been earlier on. But I'm up in Joburg for the next couple of days. I'm not going to be out on the streets too much, but I am actually going to be sending out some stickers whilst I'm up here because there's a post office nearby and I bought a bunch of envelopes and a ton of stickers up here. So if you are a patron and you've been waiting for that, they will be coming at you relatively soon. And yeah, I'm going to see a couple people up here and I might head into town at some point just because I dig being in the middle of Joburg. I love being in Joburg City. I don't know, it gives me energy. So I'm keen to go cruise the streets, but I don't know if I will. I am here for a specific purpose, and once that's done, we'll see what happens. But we're obviously living in a pandemic, and like, whilst a fair number of people are now being vaccinated, and most of the people that I would hang out with have been vaccinated, and I'm slightly immune, I do know we are still in a pandemic and can't just be gallivanting around like I normally would. Although, funny thing, I did find more weed from a year and a half ago that I left here, and it was smokable. So if this is coming at you a little funny, that might be why. Yeah, so I guess that's what I got to talk to you about. I know we just had the cabinet reshuffle and all of that, and personally grateful that Tito Mboweni is no longer there. I don't really know much about too many of the other people. I know some things, but as I always say on this podcast, I've read some things, but I don't really know anything. But I do know that austerity measures at this time are probably not correct. Even though, what the fuck do I know about economics? But as far as I see things, it seems like a good move. The rest of the things, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm never too hopeful anymore when it comes to the government of South Africa. When it comes to the people, and it comes to you listening to this, I'm somewhat hopeful. I feel like at the end of the day, we've kind of learned to just fucking keep it moving, That's it. That's it. It's like we know no one's coming to help us, so we do our things and we keep it moving. Anyway, that's, I think, enough of an intro, especially since I don't want to wake my mom up and it is quite late here. And that means it is actually shout out o'clock. Because in case you didn't know, this podcast is brought to you by you over at patreon.com/almostperfect. Now, there are a number of tiers there. There's a $1 tier, there's a $5 tier, and there is a $10 tier. And if you sign up to the $10 tier, well, you get shouted out on this podcast because it is the titular titles tier. And that means you become part of the cast and crew right here at Almost Perfect Media. So firstly, shout out to Stephen Olafia, who is the executive producer. Of course, shout outs to Chief Sales Officer of Subtle Heresies in the Greater Overberg region, Rousseau. Shout out to Vishendra Naidu, who is our spiritual advisor. Shout outs to Karan Slamman, who is the Almost Perfect hedge fund manager. Shout out to Tyron Love, who is the pantsless weasel. Shout outs to Neil Green, who is the key grip. And shout outs to Kath Jenkin, who is the inevitable ruler of the universe, and Queen Swifty. On the other end of the spectrum, we have got the king, and that, of course, is Julian. We have Karan Chetty, who is the assistant to the regional manager. Shout outs to both King Julian and Karan Chetty. Shout outs as well to one of our newer members. They haven't told me what their role here is, so I'm going to say for now they are the official MC of the Almost Perfect podcast, and that is Riz Ventura. Big fan of your work, buddy, so thanks for signing up. And of course, shout outs to Anonymous Benefactor. I've decided you get no more clues over this. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, every week I try and give clues to you, the listener, as to who the Anonymous Benefactor might be. You're meant to email me at bob@almostperfect.co.za. And then I send you stickers if you get the Anonymous Benefactor correct. But what I'm going to say now is just go listen to the intros to like the last, 10 episodes of this podcast. and you should get it. Those are the patrons over at the titular titles tier. Thank you very much for your patronage. Thank you to everyone who supports this podcast in any little way. A lot of people have reached out to me because I've been down in the doldrums, I've been in the depot vibes, and yeah, people have been really great and just messaged me and said how much this thing means to them, and that, I inspire them, and those sorts of things, which, kind of make you feel pretty good about yourself. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you to everyone who has reached out. And yeah, I'm starting to feel better, definitely better. I don't know if good is correct, but better is definitely there. So thank you very much. And lastly, if you want to support this podcast, you can buy mugs from me. They were 100 Rand each, as well as shipping on top of that, which is usually 99 Rand postnet to postnet. And yeah, 10 Rand from each sale goes to Sasonke. Sasonke is an organization that is working to decriminalize sex work right here in South Africa. They are an organization by sex workers for sex workers, and you can check them out at sasonke.org.za. Without further ado, here comes the Almost Perfect Podcast with Fortune Shumba. So how are you living, Fortune?
I'm awesome. I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. And how are you living, Bob?
I'm pretty good at the moment. I think people who listen to this podcast regularly know I've been on a bit of a downer, and I also let you know that I've been down in the doldrums a bit lately. But I've been coming out of that more and more this week, especially, and I don't know if I'm feeling good, but I'm not feeling as shit as I was feeling before. So I'm gonna take that as a win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you're starting to feel better. And I hope after this chat you'll feel even more better, if that's even anything.
I assume well, I think we're gonna have quite a fun chat because it's kind of weird because I identify you by the track Trash, but it's probably your least I'd like you track, if that makes sense in terms of your sound. Because I find you to
Yeah.
be a very like sultry and very emotional kind of musician. I mean, your newer stuff obviously has that poppier, well, more electronic, more up tempo stuff, and your earlier stuff has more of a down tempo, sullen kind of feel. But Trash is just the song that's on the other end of the spectrum entirely, and it's the one that like I always think of when I think of you. So I don't know what my question is here, but I guess how did that like come about? It's like in between everything.
Firstly, that's quite unfortunate. And I get that a lot. I find that a lot of people define me with trash, and that was literally a song that like started off as a joke.
I could
I
tell,
remember
like,
that the exact same day I was having the conversation, I was I was couch surfing at Moonchild's, right? And I was
oh
taking the
wow.
trash out in the morning, and I was like, I think I should write a song about men being trash. And she was like, fucking do it. And then I did it. And then we put it out. And, the response was not as amazing as I had anticipated, but also like it was much better than like when I put out all my other stuff. Like I worked with like, Tsepang from the Blackjacks, who was like
Yeah.
my hero for my Daylight EP. And I thought it was my best body of work. And like people paid it dust. But as soon as
I
I
thought it
put
was
out
really fucking
Trash,
good. Like Daylight, especially as a track, is super like just hits you in the gut. So
thank
I don't know.
you.
I really
Yeah.
like enjoy that work, and I just know like that's the thing. The Fortune Shumba like you know character, I would say, like comes through,
Did you
especially
did you
in
just
track.
call me Fortune Shamba?
Did
That's
I?
what the Australians actually used to call me, and I kind of embraced it. That's quite you're like the first South African I've ever heard call me
Is it
Shamba.
Shumba? My bad.
Yes, it's okay.
Wow, I feel so fucking like yeah, I feel white. I'm feeling the whiteness right now. I'm
It's
feeling the Durban
okay.
white boy, the Umhlanga like coming out of me. But it's okay.
I'm not. I'm not gonna shame you about that. I'm gonna let you just, drown in it by yourself.
Cool. I'm feeling it. Don't worry. I'm feeling it fully. Um,
Yeah, thank
are
you
we
so
definitely
much
gonna?
for that really kind compliment about the Daylight EP. That project has a really special place in my heart. But
Well, I
Trash was
can.
a joke.
But that's a weird thing is like so with the Dusk EP, like I kind of feel like the electronic side of Trash, like that more fun up tempo elements is in the Dusk EP, which isn't really there so much in Daylights. Like Daylights I find to be a very just yeah, like I was saying, like sullen and very like you have to sit in it like I was sitting in it just now, where it's just like I feel like Dusk has more of a I don't know if hopeful elements a correct way to go
Mm.
about it, but it does feel a bit lighter. So would you say you've been in like a bit of a lighter space since you made the daylight into dusk, or am I misinterpreting
Um,
that?
you probably did, but also you didn't because my art is always open for like interpretation. So you are allowed to like, feel however it makes you feel. I hate that now I have to explain the whole like the essence behind the music and just like the meaning behind, the different projects because then that will probably ruin it for you.
And it won't ruin it for me. Like that's what I love. Like these are the things. So this is why I do this, because I want to
Mm,
know. Like I love hearing how something came about and why it came about, and that being
mm,
on the record so that people years down the road can be like, this is how that actually happened.
yeah. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm actually getting a bit emotional because I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to like unpack the work that I've done. And I guess that's why people know me as like the girl that made trash. But I started off with like Dawn, which was my first EP.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
But
That's my
then
bad.
I
I'm
was
so
still
sorry.
it's like a SoundCloud exclusive, so a lot of people don't know about it. Initially, from like the get-go, I said I was gonna do a trilogy of EPs. So I started off with Dawn, which was my, like it felt like I was just like at the dawn of my this music thing and being a creative, and I was still in Nelspruit then in the hood. So I didn't know much beyond the fact that I really just loved music and I wanted to explore that. I didn't even know a lot of people. And then this one day I was working at the bank and then this guy rocked up and he looked quite interesting. So I used to just like if I saw someone that looked a bit different, because Nelspruit is quite conservative. So when someone looks a
Yeah.
bit like fashionable or like trendy or like super out of the box, you want to know what they do. So being the invasive person that I am, I kind of like asked that client what he does for a living. And he was like, I'm a photographer and I'm based in Joburg. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I make music actually. I'm just like here trying to make ends meet and also like save up to record my first project. I just don't know who to work with, just like random chats. And then he was like, I actually know some producers back in Joburg, so maybe I could connect you with them. And that's how I was introduced to the guys that produced that Dawn EP. They used to call themselves the Art Clan guys, and they were like a producer trio. And they just like sent me a couple of instrumentals, which were like super hip hop because they were rappers. And I was like, but I sing. At that time, I hadn't even started rapping because I have a lisp. So I used to like secretly want to rap, but then I also felt like it probably would be challenging for me. So then I decided to just approach those instrumentals like, with like R&B melodies and there was a bit of like, that tribal sound because obviously I also grew up on like people like Busim Song and them. So they definitely influenced my sound just to see what could come out of that, just fusing that world of like rap because that's the sound that I was given, but then choosing to sort of rebel against that and do like something completely different
Yeah,
and
that's really
something
cool.
that I thought hadn't really been done before. And I wasn't quite sure what the reception was gonna be, but at that time I wasn't even thinking about that. I was more excited to just like express myself.
Isn't that what's like really fun about the first project? Like when you like I know for some people they come together, with the intent of like we're gonna be a band and we're gonna get successful. But a lot of people, when they create like their first album or their first EP or their first couple songs, it's such a pure thing because it's like this dream come to reality, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It felt exactly that way for me. I remember how excited I got when I got into that studio for the first time, and it was at the SABC because
Oh
those guys
wow.
that I was working with were actually still students. So it wasn't even like a legit thing
Oh
because
nice. It was a
they were like
hustle.
students at the Academy of Sound Engineering and they had access to the SABC studios as part of like their, I don't know what they call it, but like they
And
could access, they
many
had access to that.
many a mixtape in Durban has been recorded because of, people studying. So
Mm.
that's totally
And
fine,
then you get access to like the coolest equipment ever and you make magic. Yeah, so we worked on that and then I put it on SoundCloud because I didn't know like how to get on these streaming platforms and whatnot. And at that time I had no
When was that?
management. In 2015, I started recording the project in 2014 when I started dating this boy, Sandile.
When you were still in Nelspruit or had you moved out?
I was still in Nelspruit and I was still like 9 to 5ing at the bank.
Was that scandalous at all in Nelspruit? Or like were you allowed to be queer in public there?
Um, at that time, I was actually still in the closet,
Okay.
surprisingly. So I couldn't fully be myself. I did take my chances every once in a while when I felt super adventurous, but like it felt quite restrictive, and I was in the hood, so I also knew that like there was the possibility of being killed for just being
Yeah.
yourself. So I sort of like navigated with that in mind the whole time. And the only place I could sort of be myself was either like at home in my room or within the music. And I think that is actually why I was like pulled towards the music because I sort of had this release where I could speak. And the cool thing about like, creating art is you could write a song and have everyone believe it's about something else. When deep down you're actually speaking about something you wouldn't necessarily be able to express in conversation. So I think that was the cool thing about the music for me. I could be myself within that without anyone even like picking it up. Like I was writing love songs about this boy that I love so much. That whole Don AP was mostly about him because also like I was composing these songs while he was there with me. And that was my first like real boyfriend outside of like the older men that took advantage of me when I was a child because they needed like, to just I guess, the man, that was the first time I knew what it felt like to be in love and to be in love with someone that was like around the same age group as me. And then yeah, then I put that out and then Tsebang from the Blackjacks ended up like hearing one of my songs and that's how I was introduced to that whole gang, Tsebang, Moonchild, Robin Third Floor. And then yeah, and then after that then like I remember Tsebang texting me on WhatsApp and I freaked out and I spent like a whole week not responding, just looking at the message and going, I
Oh
can't believe
wow.
it's him because I grew up on like 5FM and I'd hear like people talking about them or like their music or I remember at some point they were like looking for a lead singer and I was like, oh my god, but I'm in Nelspruit, how would they even like find me? And then here's this guy now like texting me and saying your music is so dope, you should come to Joburg so we can work. So that's how that essentially led to like the creation of Daylight. Then we started like exchanging ideas between myself, Tsebang, and FKA Mash, who at the time was not as huge as he is now. So yeah, they produced that project, and I guess that's why you hear that difference between Daylight and Dusk, because that Dusk, none of those producers were involved. I was now working with Steve, Vox Potent, and Alex,
Oh right.
Leo, who are both super like electronic, and he also produced Trash. So it's interesting that you could pick up that connection
That's
between
so
Trash and Dusk.
Yeah,
The
that's
same
just so
person.
interesting, like, because they are like juxtapositions almost, I would say, like, Sapang and Vox Potent.
and Steve,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, like that is like that's so cool. But at the same time, one of the things is it's like it's still you. Like it's still very much like that's the thing. Like I would say those two projects are more you than Trash is, you know?
Mm, mm.
Like
That's
although obviously
absolutely
Trash
true.
is still you. Like
I agree with you on that. And yeah, it is. It absolutely is me because I'm also, I still am quite layered. Black women are layered. We're meant to be that way. Our experiences can never be just like one thing. So for me, in as much as I look back and I'm like, oh, I don't like Trash that much, I still feel like it was a story. Even though it started off as a joke, I still, spoke from like I always write from experience. So I still was able to like sort of communicate whatever message I wanted to communicate with that song. Because I remember saying to Steve, I mean, we're going to make like a cool song that people can dance to, but I also want to make sure that at the end of the day, there's like a takeaway, there's something that someone takes home with them and, ponders on because it's pointless. If also I remember Nina Simone saying the music should be the reflection of the times. And at that time when we put Trash out, it's because I felt like men, especially cishet men were just like acting up, which they always do. Um,
I mean, not much has
but that
changed.
was the reflection of the times. And even with Dusk, so the interesting thing is you mentioned earlier that you felt like Dusk was lighter, and I think Dusk is like the saddest project I've ever made.
Wow, really?
Um, because yeah, so
I
Dawn
mean,
was
it is
about.
sad, but like all your shit's kind of sad. Like
I guess the production,
that's what tricked me, I think.
yeah, the production sort of like takes you on another dimension or to another dimension. Meanwhile, like the lyrical content, when you allow yourself to be sort of like
Yeah, like
swallowed
Strangers
into
and
the
Boys Love
content.
Crying are both really sad. Like,
Yeah. And they both about the same person that I wrote that first EP about
oh
years
wow.
later.
I mean,
Um
it is a trilogy. That makes sense.
it
Gotta
is.
tie the loose ends.
It absolutely is. So when I made Daylight with Broken Up and I moved to Joburg, because we were always like on and off. And then yeah, I wrote. I think that was like our first like big breakup where it was just like, okay, I think this is it. I think we're done. And I always, like I told you earlier, I always write from experience. So whatever I'm feeling, I will either like record as a little voice note on my phone and then I'll share it with the producer and we see where we can take it.
Is that cathartic to do it that way, or like, do you not feel like scared? Because for me, I'm always scared to be completely honest. I'll be honest there, but there is a part of me that like does resist like taking too many personal things and putting it like real life shit and putting that in.
It's a bit scary, but also like you have to be brave to be an artist, and also you have to be smart enough with your writing to not make it that obvious, you know? So I could be, like I mentioned earlier, I could be speaking about like a boy that I really love, and you might just like hear something else, you know? But I know like deep down what I spoke about, and the fact that I was able to release that, that's great for me. That's why whatever the response is after the music comes out now, it doesn't it doesn't mean as much as it's supposed to, as I guess, because
Okay.
for me, I've already like healed myself. I've already expressed whatever it is that was like, bothering me, or not even, because it's not always sad music.
No.
Whatever feeling it was that I was trying to capture on that day, I did. And I have a recording to go back to sort of listen to and maybe be reminded of that, or
Like a
sort of
diary of
now,
sorts.
yeah, it's almost like a diary, except you can be super, what's the word, I'm looking for the word, where you can be like,
Enigmatic.
I suppose, but also, okay, never
So
mind, I'll
you don't
tell
have
you
to
when
be
I remember
literal.
the word. But yeah, just being able to just like express myself, to me, that's like a privilege. And I don't take that for granted. And more I'm learning that like that's why I started making music in the first place. And that's probably why like I'm sitting with like so many of these songs, and I don't even feel the urge to like drop and like or like blow up or like you know what I mean? Like I'm okay with just using music as a platform to express and heal myself. It's more personal at this point than it is about like impressing other people. You know what I mean?
But has there been a time where it's been about impressing other people and, the
Absolutely. I
the
feel
rock
like the
star
trash
dream?
era, that trash era was trash. That whole
You're being a
era was
little
trash.
outlandish.
Yeah, because I feel like I found myself, in within a space I that I couldn't fully resonate with, but I assumed, I guess, this is what it is. This is what it's meant to be.
Okay.
And I sort of accepted that as a norm. You know what I mean? But I'm glad I sort of, and that's okay if you want it so badly and you dedicate like every single fiber in your body to that. I think that's just like commendable. I think that's beautiful. But for me, as Fortune, I find that I really enjoy music when it's from the place of just like, this is for me. So sorry, I was still unpacking. I'm so scatterbrained, so you might find that I jump from like one
You
thing
are
to the next.
probably the 105th person who has said that on this podcast, so don't even stress. Like,
So
that
you know
is
how to pick them, Bob. You really do.
I rarely do. Like I think that makes for great fucking conversations. Like I do. Because I'm the same way. Like I jump from place to place and like
Mm.
we'll forget like what we said 5 minutes ago, remember it in 10 minutes, refer to it whilst we're in the middle of
And then we
something
go
else.
back to it.
Yeah.
Do you not find that you never even like finish a story when you tell it because you're just all over the place? And you're trying to make sure you've covered every single base of that story, but then it's actually counterproductive.
But that's the problem with editing this thing, like especially like when I do the intros and stuff like that, where like I'll
Mm.
realize like I've left like stuff out, and then I'm just like fuck it, like we're sending this out anyway, like it doesn't
No use
matter.
crying over spilt milk, right?
Yeah, and plus it's just like it's realizing, you know what, not that important. Like I
Hmm.
forgot it. The story still came out the way it came out. People know the details they know, and that gives them enough. That little detail that I forgot, that only I know about. Well, fuck it. No one else is gonna know it didn't work.
We'll
And
put it in
especially
the
like,
caption or whatever.
yeah, or just bring it up the next week. Like for this kind of
Yeah,
project. So
I
yeah, but
yeah,
with
I agree.
music, you're saying you've got a ton like in the pipeline though. So you still just
Yeah, I've
writing,
got
creating. What's
quite
your
a lot
process
of
like at
music
the
in the
moment?
vault, but like in quotation marks, coming out has sort of made me, I mean, I'd been feeling that way, but now it's just like made it clearer that like I probably don't identify with a lot of that music anymore.
Okay.
My distributor actually sent me an email the other day, and they were like, "What's going on?" Because I just put out that other "Make You Feel Like" song, which wasn't my favorite either, but because it was on the Netflix show, I kind of was like, okay, whatever. Um,
Those on which
but
show
I
is that
find
on?
that it was on a Netflix series called "Why Are You Like This?"
Oh wow, you like
Um,
this? Okay, yeah.
yes. So I had to then put that out as a single so that, when people share them the song and they try to find out who the artist is, then they can access it online. I
I mean,
personally, like, if it weren't for that, I don't think I would have put it out.
but how did a
But
song get on Netflix without you like wanting to put it out? Was that a label thing or?
no, I don't even have a label. But when I had that Australian tour, I did meet like a label that side, and they were like, "We're not wanting to sign you because I've never really wanted to like be a signed artist. I love my independence and just my artistic freedom." But they were like, "We could help score you some like sync deals. So if you send us a bunch of songs, then we could just shop them around, and if something sticks, then we will get in touch and figure out a way to make this work. So that's how that came about. But like by the time because this was like I went to Oz in 2018, and this only happened in like 20, what was it, this year or last year? Pandemic is really messed up. Like
I'm with you there.
I
Like, I don't know what month it is. Like,
don't know what day of the week it is, to be quite honest. I was having this conversation with someone earlier because I've just been working.
yeah, no, I've got a flight in the morning, so that's why I know.
And where you up to?
To Joburg to help my mom move. So yeah,
Uh, which part of Joburg?
in the east, she's currently in Atlasville, and then I'm not too
Mm,
sure where the new place is. So
okay.
yeah,
All the best and safe travels.
thanks. Yeah, it's my first time like leaving the province since the pandemic hit. So yeah, I'm a little
Yeah, I can
stressed.
imagine the amount of anxiety and
I mean, I did just have COVID like a month ago, so I'm thinking I'm immune for now, but we'll see.
mm.
We'll fuck around and we might find out, unfortunately.
I mean,
Uh,
it, the thing is, it almost feels like life has become so unpredictable that like anything could happen. So you can't even rely on your own knowledge of like what you thought the world was or what you thought anything was prior to the pandemic. I feel
yeah.
like the pandemic has sort of exposed the fact that like the world is not what we actually thought it was. And a lot of
Like,
the information that we know is not even true.
yeah, like all the systems in place are literally just in shambles. Like they're just like an
Mm,
illusion. Like it's just like this all hanging together by like a very thin fucking thread that's just steadily like getting thinner and
mm,
thinner. So
yep.
yeah, because we were actually kind of chatting before this like before the chat just about that, about like the viewpoint of how do you see the future. So I guess we can talk about that a little bit. Uh, might depress some people, might not. Who knows how it's gonna go? But how are you feeling about
Hopefully we
things?
won't depress anybody.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so how are you feeling about the future and everything, considering all of this that's happened? You know, we've gone through this pandemic. We've had
Mm,
these riots and stuff in South Africa recently. I mean, in
mm,
general, South Africa is quite a fucking mess in a lot of different ways, and you know, it often for me does feel like, but it's also the problem of social media and the media in general is that you know, we're always seeing shitty things, but then at the same time, you leave your house and you're kind of also just seeing shitty things a lot. So it's like a bit like, I don't know if it's just the news.
yeah.
Like it might
You're
be the
just like,
world.
can I catch a break?
So yeah, how are you feeling about
Yeah.
things? Even now that I've set it up in that most negative way.
To be quite honest, I'm in a really good place. This is the best I felt in years. I feel like the last time I felt this good as a person was when I was a little kid, before I was even exposed to the world, and I thought I was like this little girl that like, and that the world was my oyster. I kind of feel that way again. I I also do acknowledge that like there's people that are going through some really tough times, and that explains why there's so much sadness around. So I
Yeah,
can't completely ignore that and act like it's not a reality.
but you don't have to be sad because everyone else is sad.
But then you also then have a responsibility to share some of that light within you with
Oh,
others, you
100%.
know, and inspire that sense of optimism in others, even if it's for a second, even if it's for a day. Um, and if there's several people just like spreading those good vibes and trying to get everyone to feel a bit more optimistic about things. I mean, I'm a Sagittarius, so I'm super optimistic about everything. I like to be optimistic about a lot of things, and I know that sometimes people get really annoyed when you're just like all you see is just like the good stuff, and you never want to address like the sadness. But I am aware that like there's quite a lot that people are going through. People have lost jobs, people have taken pay cuts, people have lost loved ones. It's just like so much loss in the air. and people should be allowed to feel, you know. So you can't even you can't even try to say to everyone it doesn't make sense why you've been sad for so long, because people have gone through a lot, and our realities and our experiences can never be the same. So the least I can do is try and empathize with others and be there, because I still have a bit of that light. When I pray these days, I really just pray to God to continue making me a light,
You were
for
kind of
others.
just reminding me of that, of this little lad of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Like you genuinely, like as you're talking there, that's what was coming in my brain.
It's one of my favorite songs to sing these days, and it also it reminds me of when I was a child and I was carefree and I didn't know
Yeah,
how messed up the world was. So it's also like super healing for me to sing that song.
I love that
Um,
song actually.
yeah, it's a beautiful song and it's got so much depth to it.
Yeah, beyond the like
Especially,
religious aspect to it.
yeah, for me existing as a trans woman and constantly feeling like this world is, actively trying to dim my light. That
Yeah,
song has a completely new meaning. The other day I was wondering, like, would I be allowed to sample that? Because I don't even know who the original composer is for, like, something really cool.
I wonder if it's out of copyright.
Ah, yeah, because it's been years, right?
Maybe.
Mm.
But what were you saying there? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like recreating that, but like, with a completely new meaning. And yeah, just to also inspire that, that optimism in people, and more especially queer people like me. Because I feel like a lot of us need that reminder that, you are a light. And even though the world does try to like dim your light at every chance that they get, you have to constantly keep reminding yourself. And I guess that's what's brought me this far. Some days are harder than others. Some days were definitely much more harder than others. But I'm here because I had to constantly remind myself. And I guess there's also like all this like visual cues or the music as well that's there to remind you when you kind of forget. And I hope I can be that for others as well. And I guess that's why even the process of like creating the music has changed quite a bit.
Are you more aware of the audience now?
I'm more aware of the intention. I'm a bit more intentional now. I'm not looking to be like the baddest bitch in town. I no longer aspire to that. I guess it's also because I feel like I'm much more older now to be like chasing after that. So I just like the intention. That's what has changed really. Um, from it feels like when I created Dawn all over again, and that's crazy because
Okay.
I just wrapped up the trilogy and now I'm starting again. Like I don't know where I'm supposed to go with the songs are all just like scattered everywhere, but like there isn't a clear direction. But I do know that I want to go back to that place when I created that first project, and it's not even wanting to go there. I feel like I'm there, but now I'm more I'm more of myself. When with that first EP, I had to conceal quite a lot. I had to be tactical with how I express certain things so that I don't blow my cover. Now I feel so liberated that like there's absolutely no need for me to try and like conceal things or use metaphors or all these other things to tell my story so that it can be palatable and people can sort of like enjoy it without being annoyed or disappointed by the content, which is something that I used to worry about back then. I don't even know why. And also, the guys that I was recording with at the time were like straight guys who I didn't know that well. So I wasn't quite sure whether they
How they
were
would
gonna
receive
like,
things.
yeah. So yeah, I think I'm sort of back at that place, but now I'm like Super Saiyan Fortune. And Super Saiyan Fortune is not like trying to be the baddest bitch. Super Saiyan Fortune is trying to be the baddest mom. I want to be a mom. I want to build a legacy so that my child can be proud of me one day, even when I'm not here. I can leave, something tangible that within the family and maybe even in the world can be celebrated and maybe influence others as well. And that's what drives me these days.
I love that. Although I was kind of thinking a little bit there when you were talking about the restrictions essentially in the earlier work that you had around you, like with both internal and external. Do you worry now, or I don't know if worry is the correct term, but now that you no longer have those creative barriers, essentially these things that not even barriers, but like restriction can often breed creativity. It's something that like I subscribe to quite a bit. If you put parameters on something and you create a box for it, then you're thinking about how to get out of that box can make you very creative. And sometimes when there's no longer those parameters, it can
That's really
create.
interesting.
Have you never heard of that?
I'd never heard of it and I'd never looked at it from that perspective. So that's a fresh take. Maybe that's probably gonna make me listen to my first couple of projects with a bit more appreciation.
Okay, well, I hope so, because
Yeah, so
yeah,
thank you
like
for that. That's a good lesson for me today. Thank you.
I mean, I love the idea of that, of restriction breeds creativity, because like you look at just the history of everything, like that's what happens. Is like
Mm,
someone needs something and they make it. Like, they're like, I don't have this other thing that would do the thing I need, so let me do it this way instead, And
yeah,
like,
because as humans, we're meant to be resourceful.
yeah, that's how we got to where we are now.
Mm. That's so interesting. I'm thinking back of like when I was a child, I used to do this thing because they wouldn't buy me dolls. So I would pick flowers and then I'd imagine like I'd sort of use my imagination to give them hands and like feet and personalities. And I'd spend hours like speaking to them and like playing with them. And it's just like now like what you've just said about like, that restriction allowing you to sort of, you know, find ways to get out of the box without really getting out of the box. I think I've always been that person from when I was a kid, just like the whole flower situation.
Kind of what you were telling me just now, essentially. Like that, you were
100%.
being creative and finding different ways to like say these things and express yourself, because you didn't want to let certain
Yeah.
things out.
Because the worst thing for me was like, I don't want to lie. I don't want to sing about being in love with girls. Even though I was in the closet, I still felt really conflicted lying within my art. That's why I think I just made it like a thing from the start that like everything that I write should be from my experience. It's a bit more easier for me to relay the message when it's something when it's a reality that I've lived. Unless I was writing for other people, then I'd probably have to be creative but feels it feels like I've done justice to my music when I write from my experience. So when I was creating those first couple of projects, I was also still aware that like, okay, even though we're in the closet, we still can't lie. The worst thing
There's
you can
still a
do
way
is
to
tell a
tell your
lie
truth.
for
Yeah.
me. Yeah, I love to live my truth, even if back then it meant like sort of like concealing it a little, as opposed to just completely lying,
Yeah.
or even just like I guess I wouldn't say diluting it, but just like, and this is the word that I've been looking for since like I had a long day, Bob. I mean 9 to 5, okay? So please forgive me for forgetting my word. But yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. I just remembered I was relaying the story of like the Daylight EP. So from
Yeah.
Dawn, then Daylight was created, but that's when I got a transfer from the bank back in Nelspruit and I transferred to Joburg to try and, pursue this music thing after Tsebang had given me the
Wait, so
confidence and sort of like,
how did that
validated
happen?
me.
Like you like applied for a transfer. You were working at a bank in Nelspruit, and like you were like, "Can I go work at this branch in Joburg?"
Yes, I actually, and the thing is, I was already like clashing with my manager back then because they were quite homophobic. So I did need to
Oh,
move anyway. And when I asked for it, they couldn't wait to let me go. They were like, "Oh, where do you want to go? When do you want to leave?" And I was like, "I want to go to Joburg." And then I didn't know much because the last time I'd been here was when I was still in varsity, and that didn't end well because I dropped out and I just got super depressed. Got to a point where like I was trying to end it all. A friend saved me. So this was like my second time now coming back to Joburg. But
how are you feeling coming back after all of that?
I was slightly anxious, but I was also super excited by the fact that I was gonna meet like some of my musical heroes in person and get to work with them as well. Cause when I was still at UJ, I would secretly like try to like make music. I remember hooking up with like some guy who claimed he was a producer, and I gave him like $600, and I never heard from him again.
Wow.
But I would even like
I mean,
because
you
I
get what
got
you
so
paid for
annoyed.
there.
I know I did not.
No, I'm saying because like $600 for a track is pretty cheap. Like,
It is. But I wasn't like I had no clue. I had no cooking clue how things worked. You know what I mean? I just like, and this was like a thing
okay.
that I was sort of pursuing
Fuck,
in secret.
that must happen so much. Like people must get
It
hustled
it
so fucking hard coming from like a
I'm
small
sure they
town into the
you
university
know,
wanting to like make music.
yeah, because the reason why I went to UJ in the first place was because it's in Joburg. I didn't even apply at any other university. After metric, I was just like, I'm going to Joburg. I'm gonna get this degree, but then I'm gonna be in Joburg, so I'll probably like be able to then record music. So when that did not work out and I felt super overwhelmed, I dropped out, went back home, and that's when I started working at the bank. I feel like I'm going in circles.
No, like you're telling the story. It's just in different parts. This is like
Yeah.
Memento.
So yeah, but right before I left, because Sepang and I would exchange ideas, and then I had a friend back in Nelspruit who had like a DIY bedroom studio. So I'd started laying down some vocals before I left for the second project. I'd started recording some ideas with that guy. His name is Anera Yasol. And then after that, I sent those songs to Sepang, and then he started just like structuring them and like adding the live instruments, just like building them up and working hand in hand with FKA Mash, who actually was a bit more involved than Sepang was actually. And then yeah, then I moved to Joburg. I'd already recorded like the demos. It was just like a matter of now refining and putting the
But did you
project out
think like
now.
the dream is coming to life now? Like, were you like, I'm gonna make it, or
Absolutely.
what?
I thought like this is it. I'm gonna be a superstar.
I can imagine. How did you get to Joburg from Nelspruit?
I took a taxi. I still remember the taxi. It was red. I told Sandile I was leaving him behind because the plan was him and I were gonna be free.
Like, I'm imagining you sitting in this taxi and just all the thoughts going through your head.
Oh my God. It was a very daunting experience. It was the longest taxi ride of my life because I was just like, am I about to make the same mistake again? And am I gonna come back in a coffin this time around?
Wow. Oh,
What am I
wow. Okay.
doing? What the hell am I doing? I remember I didn't even have a place to stay, but luckily I'd met this like lady at the bank back in Nelspruit. So I reached out to her and she was like, yeah, you can come stay with me. It's cool. So for like the first couple of months I was at hers while trying to figure out like trying to plot out my next couple of moves. So there wasn't it felt super rushed. Like I Sebang text me and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna just like drop everything and go to Joburg.
I mean, but that's what you do though. When that happens, that's what you do. Like when you get those kind of opportunities, when you've been living, I imagine, like in this town like
You don't
Nelspruit,
want, yeah, you don't want to wonder for the rest of your life what could have happened had you pursued that, had you not allowed fear to take over.
Exactly, and look where you are now because you took that taxi ride, like, you did the things.
It really did change like the course of my life, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful to all the people, whether it's a Bang or a Moonchild or a Honey, all those people or a Robin. I'm just like super thankful because
Yeah,
it
great
was
crew.
so
The Voice Boys
validating.
crew are amazing, like, especially at that time,
They
that period was so good.
It was iconic, right? I miss those days. I remember going on that tour with everyone and getting to know everyone. Cause it all happened so quickly. 1 minute I was just like recording my little demo and putting it on SoundCloud. Next thing I'm like linking up with Sabang and they're going on an African tour. They're going to Swaziland and Mozambique and all these places. And they were like, come with us. And I'm like, oh my God, finally a place where I can belong and I can fully be myself.
Yeah.
So I'm really thankful for that chapter in my life. And I think it definitely contributed to the person I am today and the life that I live today. I'm glad I was brave enough to take that leap of faith.
It wasn't even that long ago because, like, it's weird for me, like, I look back because 'cause I'm, like, now 34 and, like, the stuff
Oh, you're
that's
such a
happened to you.
baby.
Oh, I was about to say the stuff that happened to you, like, happened to me, like, 10 years ago, like, all these, like, good memories. Like, like, when things were, like, on the up, like and for you, it was, like, 4 or 5 years ago, like, where it starts becoming real, like, where you're, like, a part of the
Yeah.
scene, where you're a part of the thing, and you're like, "Oh my god, is this it? Like, is this what the life is? Is this what making music is really like?" And for me,
Yep.
it was like, "Is this what, like" yeah, like, being a part of this whole thing is like, and it was like amazing like when you're like starting out and it's like it just starts becoming more and more real, but then as it becomes
100.
more and more real you kind of become a bit more used to it, and then I don't know, for me like
It
maybe started
doesn't feel that
wanting more.
exciting, and it gets to a
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
yeah, like when you're chilling with Rick Astley and like you're like, I don't really like this guy, like I think he's a bit of an asshole. You're like, I've come such a long way
Yeah.
since the Winston pub. Like for me.
I'm so sad because I've never been to the Winston pub, and I know it's quite iconic.
It might still survive. It might still survive.
You think so?
It
And maybe I can do a show one day at the Winston
they're
pub.
they're quite lucky with the owner there, and, like, yeah, he really digs that place, and I don't know what the real like, cause Matt's like, I'm friends with the guys who own it, and so we've had some chats and, like, but I don't really know the real situation or anything, but I know it's still there. Like, I know the Winston
Mm.
hasn't officially closed down and might one day get to open its doors again. So
Hopefully.
I'm holding thumbs, and if it doesn't, something else will come about. But legacy
Yeah.
matters, and like I
Legacy
really,
matters, and I'm sure there's a couple of people that they employ there as well.
yes,
Um,
Patrick and fucking all the guys. No, like some of those guys listen to this podcast, so like I'm big
Shout out
fans
to
of
them, man.
everyone there. So like
Mm,
fully, like that's the thing. Like I want the Winston to carry on, but I know like once we're out of this pandemic, things will happen again, like new things will start up,
mm.
and like we've lost a hell of a lot, but I don't like it's terrible, like, because I'm saying this as someone who's lost like a comedy festival basically, like that I'd been working,
So
like I'd
sorry about
done
that.
it's yeah, thank you, but like the point is more just that like something else will happen, someone else will do something, someone in a couple of years, like there will be a rebirth, there will be new phases, new spaces, new things. Like it's just
Mm,
what that is. That's the thing, and it is the tragedy of the loss that we were all experiencing now, like you were
100%.
mentioning earlier. And like one of those
Mm,
things that I think a lot of us have lost is venues, and yeah, maybe some artists are never going to carry on again. Like I know like there's comedians who are never going to do comedy again after these 2 years because it's done for them. So, but at the same time, there will be new people, and something, out of the ashes, a phoenix will rise. So I don't know. I think I'm a bit. I think this conversation has actually made me feel more optimistic. Thank you.
Optimistic. I'm glad. I really am glad. I also do hope. I guess also you do. I believe that like there's power in words. So whatever you put out there, there's a huge chance that it might manifest into something. So the more you just like speak all of these positive things into existence, I feel like you'll probably start like seeing the difference, even though it at this point it almost feels like a stretch. It made a ton of difference to me when I started speaking to myself differently and speaking about the world differently, even when sometimes I don't feel like, saying nice things about the world. I'll try to be a bit like, oh, about life in general. I'll try to watch the things I say. Because I've been made aware that like we're that powerful as people, and we don't even realize it sometimes that the things that we say do really manifest.
Well, it's
You
about
know,
like you invariably get what you want. Like you create the world around you that you want to live in, essentially. Okay, so we got rudely cut off thanks to South African internet vibes. We can blame Telkom, we can blame MTN on my side,
ESCOM
Escom, we can blame Sora Ramaphosa, we can blame
and the ANC always
all
blame
the
the
people
ANC.
and and
Yeah.
and Julius as well. Let's just throw
And
him in there.
the
Just for good measure. Uh, yeah, so we got a little cut off, but basically we were talking about being optimistic about the future, and that obviously leads to the question of what is in store in the future. You have been working on a lot of music, and I don't mean because you were talking about wanting to be a mom and those sorts of things, but I mean in the more slightly immediate future and in terms more of career and music. I know you've been talking about the fact that you're not really thinking about music in terms of being famous and those sorts of things anymore, and more of a just creating something from the heart. But yeah, what's in store
uh-huh.
for you? How do you see things unfolding from here?
uh, to be quite honest, I don't know. I don't want to lie and say I know. I'm just going with the flow at this point. I'm just doing whatever comes naturally. At least
But you're
that's
manifesting
what I
things.
appreciate. Sorry?
But you're manifesting things. You're talking about like, like having words having power and like, putting that into the world. So what are you putting into the world? What are you wanting to come
I
out?
want a baby. I want to be someone's mom. I want to be Sandile's mom. I can't wait to be a mom. I just like I was on the internet the other day and I was looking up like what my options are because I know it's also quite stressful to adopt as, a queer person.
Yeah.
So I would probably wanna just like avoid all that, the stress. I'd probably go like the surrogate route. So I figured there's quite a lot of money that I need to save. I've started like saving up on that. So I guess that's like already in motion.
Okay.
I
So that is your immediate future. I was busy saying like, "Oh, motherhood down the road," but that's actually the thing.
That's like the biggest thing. I 9 to 5 in advertising now. I work as a strategist.
Okay, what does a
So
strategist fucking do? Like, please
I
explain what a
strategize.
what does that mean? Like, in terms of advertising, what the fuck does that actually mean? Like, are you going like, we're gonna get 700 fucking, white dudes between the age of 24 and 35 to buy this product in the next 3 months utilizing these methods? Is that like the
Uh-huh.
thing? Or like,
That's
or
a
is that
you could literally go and work as a strategist tomorrow.
I kind
That's
of like
exactly what it is.
no shade to all the people working at advertising, but I kind of feel like that for all the roles in advertising.
um, I think well, advertising is more of like the initial stage before it gets handed over to the creatives and the designers. I think we do like the more tactical thinking before the creatives. There's a bit of I'd love to think I'm a creative strategist because I still have like a creative lens that I look at things from within my strategy work. But yeah, it's just like planning, planning so that everything sort of follows a certain formula. I don't know if I'm actually explaining it right, but yeah, it's pretty much what you said earlier.
No, it makes it makes sense to me. Although I was definitely taking the piss because while I might understand it, actually doing the job I think takes a bit more skill than I was implying there. Because just looking at my own shit, I'll think this is how I want to position myself. These are the kind of people I want to attract. And then a year later, I've got 100 new followers, and they're none of the people that I thought I was targeting. So I think I need to
Mm.
maybe chat to you about my brand strategy.
Absolutely, I'm happy to help. But also it takes practice, it takes time. I'm still pretty junior, so I'm learning, I'm still learning quite a lot myself. Luckily, I have an amazing mentor who's made this a bit more easier. The way I look at insights now is a bit more different, for instance, and the way I solve problems is different because now I'm very good at playing the devil's advocate, even when it's my own thinking.
Okay.
I'm able to look at things from every single angle, and that's what essentially a strategist key role is. So if
Yeah.
this is the approach that we're taking, what could possibly go wrong and how do we avoid those things? It's really just a lot of planning.
Huh.
Yeah, so that when the creatives come in, then all the groundwork is done and the foundation is laid out, and they have that structure to follow to guide them.
If you were like a script writer or something, it would be like the outline for the script. You've gone these are the
Mm,
beats you need to
mm.
hit. Have at it.
Yeah, so I want to be in the near future. I want to improve my strategic abilities. I want to be a better strategist. I was quite inspired by Rihanna today, where she just she went, maybe we don't need to do the music no more. Maybe, maybe I need to pursue other things. And I found that coming into this realization of who I am, I find that some of my dreams don't even feel like they were mine to start with. It almost
Uh,
feels like everything was just like a coping mechanic or an escape for me. So I find myself now, I'm
wow.
still figuring a lot of stuff out, to be quite honest. So you might speak to me tomorrow or even next week or whenever, and I might give you a completely different answer. But I low key feel like music was always a platform for me to be my truest self. And that's why I was so passionate. And I guess maybe I also put so many expectations, and there was so much pressure for me to sort of turn that into a full-time career just so I can get to live as myself. So just so I can wear a wig every single day of my life because that's what I do for a living, and not have people think it's weird because it's probably a
Wow.
bit more acceptable when you're an artist, he's a creative.
That's actually weirdly something I kind of thought before this interview, watching the trash video, that it allowed you to express, a more femme gender identity without people giving a shit about it.
Yeah, I mean, when we shot that video in Soweto, straight after the shoot, we stayed at that tavern and all the guys, straight guys, were there and they got drunk and they were dancing with me in my leotard. And had it been a different setting where we weren't shooting a video and I didn't seem like a creative and I was just a queer body just existing and wearing whatever I felt liberated wearing, I don't think the response would have been the way it was. I remember everyone was singing along to Trash and they just heard it that night, and I was like, yeah, this is cool, but I don't think you guys would probably be this accepting and, you know,
It wasn't for the situation.
yeah, had I been a random guy who actually lives in this neighborhood, in this specific neighborhood, but I'm someone that you guys have never seen before, so you're assuming I'm probably on TV or something, and then you just realize it's the camera crew and everything, so I must be important when I wasn't ever. And then you decided to be nicer to me, but I doubt you'd be this nice had you met me in a different context and I was wearing the exact same thing that I was wearing on that day. So music did definitely gave me an excuse to just like be me. And I wasn't even aware of it. There's so much that I wasn't aware of. It almost feels like, it really feels like I had died and then like something had taken over, someone else had taken over my body. But this is because I had built this like personality and this around my traumas and just trying to navigate this world. And then it got to a point where I convinced myself that like this is not necessarily that this is who I am now, but also just like this is how it's always gonna be for me now. So I need to make peace with it and just keep it moving, you know? And this was from a young age. This was like from, I think the last time I was truly myself before I feel like the world killed me was before I went to grade one. I remember going to grade one for the first time, and that's when I realized there was something different about me from the other kids. Like the first day of school, I had to stand in front of everyone and introduce myself. And before I even said much, the kids just like started laughing at me, and it didn't make sense
Wow.
because where I came from, everyone thought I was like this like incredible thing. Because I was also quite like everyone was like, "Oh my god, you're so adorable!" And I loved dresses as a kid, and I loved flowers, like I mentioned earlier. So everyone thought I was like this cool, really like
It's a sweet kid.
different kid, but also like everyone felt like when I was really young, they felt like they had that responsibility to protect me. And when I kind of went into the real world, it was a completely like different game plan altogether, which is strange because the older I get, then like the more homophobic people became, and like within even the family setting. Because I think when I was a child, it was cute, and they thought it was a phase, that I
Yeah.
identified as a girl, that I was trans, and that's all I like. I did not have any trans representation in my world. I was like in the villages in Bumalanga, and I just like knew that I this was not the body that I was meant to be born in, and I did not identify with like any of the experiences that the boys around me sort of identified with, you know.
Yeah.
So I couldn't relate at all, no matter how hard I tried, and that to me, when I went into the world and I was now like told that I can't be this person or I can't I was made to feel like I was being ridiculous when I told everyone I was not a boy, and I think that killed my soul. When they say like when someone says I'm like yeah, but like my soul is dead. I feel like that was just like how I was existing for the longest.
Because you just felt repressed and like you couldn't be yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And now I look back at some of those things, and but now I'm looking at things from a different perspective, and it's starting to make sense why I was the kind of person that I was, or why I viewed the world the way I did back then. And it turns out I wasn't even that person. I don't even know. Like I don't know how to express it because these are like early days and I'm still figuring a lot of stuff out. I probably need to spend time with like older, more experienced trans people and learn from them because I've pretty much just been here by myself in this house and working, just slaving away. So I haven't had that opportunity to be like educated.
So have you not spoken to too many people about it, or what's been the situation?
Besides my
Like,
close friends and family, and none of them are trans, I haven't had that encounter with like another trans body to be able to make sense of some of these feelings that I'm even like struggling to like express right now, where it's
yeah,
like I know the feeling, but it's just hard to find the words because I've never been here before. So it's all just muddled at this point. But one thing is for certain, I know that I have always been a woman and I am a woman, and I was denied that right because of so many expectations that the world has placed on our bodies.
you're denied a girlhood essentially. Like you were forced
Yeah,
into a
I was
boyhood.
definitely denied that, which feels unfair. I've also started speaking to a therapist because there's also just like a bit of anger, you know. I look back and now I sort of recall some of the things that I thought I'd buried away, and I it's hard to look at like certain relatives the same, but it's great because I'm by myself here, so I'm not at home. And I guess that's the other thing, right? Being able to get this 9 to 5 has afforded me the luxury to exist in my truth, you know? It's given
Yeah,
me a privilege where I'm safe, I am within a gated community, I am able to pay for my own bills. I don't need to ask anyone else for a favor, especially because it's a bit harder for you to reach out and ask for help from like family and stuff when you know this is your reality. And sometimes you're scared to even express certain things because what if I get like cut off, you know, by family? So at this point for me, if I came out to my dad or my mom, which I did, if I came out to them and they rejected me, I wouldn't,
be on the streets.
yeah, I wouldn't be left like feeling helpless and feeling like there's nothing left here for me. I would be able to carry on my own because I can maintain myself. And I think that's why so many people are unable to truly be themselves. There's also like so many other things that you need to be cognizant of and you need to consider before you take that plunge, you know?
Yeah, I can't even really like imagine, like I
That's
can
why
try and
I'm
empathize.
against people that are constantly telling people like be yourself, just like be honest and be the because not everyone unfortunately has the same privileges and reality, and
Yeah,
you have like and you wouldn't know unless you were in their shoes.
100%.
It's pretty reckless to go around saying don't live a life that's not yours, just be you and the rest will fall into place because that's a bit unrealistic.
Yeah, especially when we've read the newspaper headlines sometimes.
Mm.
Yeah, when parents don't
People
necessarily accept
literally
things and
get
yeah,
killed.
exactly. Like
People lose their lives. So we have to be careful with like the platforms that we're given. I'm a bit more responsible with social media now. I used to be so reckless. Oh my God.
I
I
remember,
had to like I had to like take down my entire Facebook because I was just like, oh no. But then I realized it was also like a projection because I was in such a bad space, but I
yep.
couldn't even like express it.
Yeah, social media is like a weird thing for mental health because like it does allow you to like just let stuff out, but then that stuff's out there. Like, people now
Right?
like view you in a
Once it's
certain
on the
way.
internet, taking it back.
Oh man. Sorry, what were you saying there before I cut you off?
No, I was saying we have a responsibility as people with platforms, and I'm learning that every day. Even at work, where when I show up, I always make sure that I'm showing up for my Black people and my LGBTQI community. Even like I feel like they've even started like allocating me into like jobs that sort of require that kind of thinking. Because for me, it's all about like creating a world that's inclusive, especially for people that were previously marginalized. So I've learned to take like the platforms that have been given a bit more seriously and treat them with like a bit more caution. And I guess it comes with like age as well.
Yeah. Age
Yeah,
teaches you a
just
lot.
like learning to be a bit more responsible, a bit more empathetic, a bit more. Initially, I wasn't able to look at things from like a different angle. It was either like this is what I'm seeing now, this is what it is, and this is what I'm going with.
It's so fucking relatable. Like,
Hundred
that's how
percent.
that's how I was, like, for so long. It was just like,
Yeah,
"I know better, I'm doing that."
it's important to consider other perspectives as well, and it really does a world of difference to just it allows you to be a bit more empathetic as well, which is what this world needs, a bit more empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to the thing I like Yeah. I always try to like, and I guess it's more recent that I always try to like find the best in like everyone, to see the best in everyone, right? So even when like someone has done me dirty, I'll try to like look at things from a different angle, and it's more for myself than anyone else, because then I'm not stuck with like that resentment, you know? I've just
Yeah.
managed to make sense of it in my head and said, you know what? They had their reason why they did that. Maybe they had a really traumatic experience and it triggered something at some point in life, and then this triggered something else. And then that's why they are being horrible to me, you know?
Yeah.
I'm always just trying to like rationalize things and trying to like, it probably is like making excuses for like really shitty people, but it's fine because it
I mean, there
allows
is a
me to,
reason why those people are that way. Like, there is.
yeah, I
Like,
always,
that's the thing. That's literally
mm,
there are causes for the actions. There's so I don't think it's necessarily excusing it so much as finding fucking explanations.
yeah, because people are not able to empathize anymore. People are quick to just judge from like a mile away and not even allow themselves to consider like a different perspective or
Or
consider
just to
other
remember
people's
when you did the exact same thing that you are fucking ostracizing someone else for. That's the thing for me. Like, it's like I'm often like, wait, haven't I done the same thing? Like,
mm.
haven't not been like
And
a
that's probably
shitty
because you
person.
didn't know better when you made that
Exactly.
mistake,
That's
and then
exactly
uh,
it.
so chances are they also did not know any better. I'm not saying we should educate everyone, but for your own peace, maybe some things are not even worth getting that worked up about. There's certain things that are just like extreme, but some things are also just like you want to just try and practice a bit of empathy and then try to see where the other person was coming from, even if they were being malicious. And yeah, just for your own well being. Because
Yeah.
then you're not like sitting here with all these feelings of resentment and hatred when this person is probably like living their best life, you know? Um, that's that's how I've been
Oh,
able
that's
to
the
get
sad
over like,
truth.
yeah, it's more for yourself, honestly. It's not even for the other person. Like I found that like when I was sitting here and waiting for like that man that raped me when I was a child to come and apologize to me because I was so mad, it actually ate me up on the inside. I feel like he probably even forgot he did that to me once upon a time. And then then like 20 something years later, I was still sitting with that bottled up anger.
Well, of course
Um,
you were. Like that's
yeah,
very understandable.
but then when I went back and I started speaking to people, it took a while to even go back to like my father's house, but because he was a family friend. But when I started like engaging with other people just around like how he grew up, and you realize that he had such a traumatic childhood to a point where it really messed him up. Would I want him to go to jail? Would I want his life to be ruined after like the very difficult childhood he's had? I think because I also had a difficult childhood, it's now like I find myself empathizing with people that have wronged me, based off the fact that maybe they probably had a really
That's an
messed up
unreal amount
childhood.
of empathy. Like that genuinely is like empathy to the next level. But I think it is because
It's
I
for
mean
myself.
but it's also having gone through something so traumatic, like you can understand other people's trauma almost, or am I just pulling at
100%.
straws there? Okay.
No, 100%. But also, even if you haven't gone through something, I guess there's the opportunity to educate yourself and then be empathetic, you
Yeah.
know, be more empathetic. So, you, for me, I didn't have to like, learn psychology and go through like heaps of textbooks to understand his psyche, and because I'd gone through it. I guess that's the only difference. Because I'd gone through it, then there's probably no need to like delve into that. There probably is, but like for me, it was much more easier to empathize because I'd gone through it.
That's I mean, it just took a long time to get there, but I mean, that obviously is a process that like yeah, I can't really begin to wrap my head around.
Yeah, it probably would have felt the same for me last year or even the year before that, but I think it's just this like new path that I'm on. I'm just releasing, man. I'm just learning to let go of control.
Yeah, I'm really glad I'm having this conversation with you now because I feel like we would have had such a different interview if we had chatted like when I started this podcast.
Yeah, I it definitely would have been something else, and I wouldn't have been proud of it. I wouldn't have been proud of it. I'm also glad we're doing this now. And what do they call it? Divine timing, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, things are starting to just like it feels everything that's been happening for the past couple of like weeks has felt super organic, and I appreciate that. It's just like I had low key hoped I would get interviewed by you one of these days. I think even during like your Durban Youth Radio days, and I think I
But
was
you were never
still.
in town, were you? Like, I mean, if you
I
could have
know.
literally just sent me a message, be like, "I'm in Durban," I'd be like, "Come be on the radio." Like,
But this finally happening, this interview, this conversation, rather, let me call it that,
I've been waiting for you
finally
to release
happening.
some new music, but
Super,
yeah,
it
you
feels
were.
super organic. It feels like it was meant to happen this way, you know? I don't know about the music.
No, because that's the
I
thing.
need
So
to.
that's the thing. You've been on my list for a while. Like I've wanted to definitely chat to you this year for like you were on my list for this year. And yeah, like I've just been like waiting for something new to come out or like something to be able to chat about and that. And then I was just like, fuck it. Like let me just chat to you. Let me just see where you're at.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I know. Yeah, you like it just seemed like you're in a different space in an interesting space. So I mean, obviously, like in terms of the trance thing, but more like as you're saying, like in your mental, well, your mental headspace, it does just seem like you've really, yeah, you're coming to terms with yourself, I guess.
Thank you. I feel that way too. Thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
cool. Well, cool.
Um,
Thank you for the chat. You got anything else you
is
wanna?
that it? It felt so short.
It's been like an hour and a half. Like we've been at it.
We didn't even get to dusk. What do you mean? Have
We
we been
chatted
that
about
long?
dusk a bit. We did. We chatted about Dusk, about how it's actually your saddest album, but we didn't really chat about how it was made.
How
Do you
it's
want?
actually said. Oh yeah, it's because Sandile passed away last year, so I was
Oh
not gonna
fuck!
put those songs out, but then
I'm
I'd written them about
so sorry.
him, and then that's okay. I still talk to him.
I know the vibe.
I've decided to just hold on to him because there's no way that I'm gonna be able to exist without him. And it almost felt like I robbed myself of like, you know, quality time I could have spent with him with that back and forth that we had. And it felt like when he passed away, it felt like we're just like finding each other again. And now we're both here in Joburg. And in the end, he passed away here, which is crazy because the plan was for us to move here and finally be together and be free. And
Fuck.
then finally, when I feel like now I've got, because I also low key feel like I sabotaged our relationship because of just like my own little traumas and things that I was dealing with. And I
As we
was
do.
finally starting to like get into the flow of things. And he seemed like he was also in a better place. Which the last voice note he sent was like, yeah, let's like move to Blackberry together and like start a family. So I was like, wow, someone has grown up. Someone finally decided to grow up and be a man.
Wow, I so misread this EP, but yeah, damn, that is
Yeah. So
because
most of those songs about him, I think that trilogy from like Dawn, which marks the start of the relationship, to Dusk, which basically marks the end of
that
that
relationship.
chapter.
So I guess
Yeah.
that's also why, like, musically, it's a bit difficult now to also like know where to start with, moving forward.
True. True. I never actually I've never admitted that even to myself, but that's absolutely true. That's spot on. What do I talk about? Who do I write about? But he's gonna be reincarnated when I have my baby, and my baby's gonna be called Sandile. So
I picked that up.
Yeah, so it's definitely it's given me a new lease, a reason to want to leave. I guess that's why he left me with that. He knew me so well. Like no one knew me better than that guy. I feel like he knew me better than I knew myself. So he did kind of give me a new lease when he spoke about, the family thing. And yeah, I guess that was his part to give to me. And he kept saying like, "You need to release the music." He kept like pestering me because it was about him. He couldn't get over the fact that like he had someone write like 3 EPs about him.
I mean, that is super fucking romantic, and also
Yeah,
I
it's
would also be
corny.
terrified. I would be terrified, to be honest, like having other people hear about my relationship with someone. But if they don't know, I guess it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the fact that like I wasn't overt with things. Like you comprehended the EP as like something completely different,
A bit more hopeful. I mean, because that's the thing. Like build you up, and like even waiting isn't like to me. Strangers and Boys Love Crying are like
Waiting
the
has his voice note at the end. The last voice note that he sent me.
oh
That's
wow, I
him
didn't realize
speaking.
that that's what that
That was
was.
his favorite song. Because this was when we'd broken up, and I was like, if you keep me waiting, I'm gonna find another nigga.
I mean,
And then
that's
yeah,
kind of what I figured. So that's the thing. So what I found that EP to be about in my mind was about moving on, but like clearly not so much.
yeah. But also the funny thing is waiting is also because it has a double entendre, it also speaks to like that was also like my love letter to music to say like if I'm still going to be struggling while trying to pursue the music, because the lyrics are one day you'll wake up and realize that my heart belongs to someone else. So it spoke to him, but also to the fact that my passion, my passions might like end up going towards something else, which I guess now it's strategy.
That happens quite a lot, I think, like as you grow as a
Yeah.
creative person.
And I found that I never allowed myself to explore other things because like I always, which was also, I guess that's why I now have this love hate relationship with the music. I love just being creative, but music is kind of like the relationship is in a weird place now because I placed like so many expectations on that, and like my entire life revolved around like this music career. And the minute I let go of that, I felt like I started to leave. I began to live a life and not, you know, and I stopped surviving just to get to that thing. Um, Now I want to look forward to being a mom, being like promoted at work to like a senior strategist so I can get to work on like even bigger accounts and then like make sure that like queer people are visible everywhere through advertising and make sure that like the right music is used in adverts and the right musicians who deserve the platform are being given the shot. And I find that like that gives me so much joy, and that was my big, I guess also it was like the fear of like exploring something else. Wait, are we starting the interview all over again? It was like the fear of like, what if I do discover something that I love? What if I try out swimming and I actually find out that I really enjoy it, and then it takes over the music, it takes over from that.
And then you don't want to feel like you're not a real musician.
Yeah, and also then I lose that like sense of like womanhood that I kind of had, like that glimpse, of being a woman.
Okay. Okay, I see
So
you.
now I can just be a woman without like depending on music to give me access to that. And I can do all these other cool things that I love that I had been denying myself this whole time because I was holding on to this one thing that gave me access to like my womanhood.
So you're no longer defined as, yeah, Fortune Shumba musician.
I don't know. I think I'm just a human that does things, a bunch of things. I wouldn't want to say I'm just a musician because that would be very unfair to this little girl that lives within me that has so much potential to do so many things and possibly even change this world. To pin it to just musician, that wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't. it wouldn't feel just. So I am a human that really does cool things, and I'm also going to be Sandila's mom one day in the near future once I get my money right. That's why I need to work hard and make sure that I kill this advertising stuff and just get my money, and build the life that I always fantasize about ever since I was a little kid, even though it was like secret. Now I can just live a more fulfilling life as opposed to conforming. Yeah, that's it. That's I guess that's my plan for the
That's your
future.
yeah, I think that's a great like place for us to leave things. Yo,
Yeah.
what a story. What a like Jesus Christ, what a fucking life you've led. Like let's just like in those not even 2 hours, everything that you just like said was so much to take in. But what I love is the perspective that you've found at this point and how it's guiding you forward. And it's definitely left me with quite a lot to think about. So thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. I hope you feel better than when we started.
Oh,
And I
I
hope you
do.
carry this energy with you for the next couple of days. You're coming to Joburg. That's something to look
Yeah,
forward to.
it's weird circumstances, but I'm definitely keen to. Yeah, I haven't seen my mom since the pandemic, so I haven't seen my mom in a year and a half. So I'm very keen to
Oh,
see her. So yeah,
I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. I also want to say I'm really interested in your story. So even if it's not on here, even if it's not on the podcast, I mean, it would be interesting for me to interview you on your podcast. But um, I'd love to just hear like what it took for you to get to this point, because I'm just interested in, you know,
you know what's so
hearing
weird is
people's
like
stories.
my like early life is definitely like interesting to a degree, but like not to me. Like if that makes sense. Like it's like it feels like I actually like yeah, like it's weird. Like I'll just be telling stories sometimes like to my girlfriend or to friends and they'll be like, "What? Like that happened?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's a weird thing. Hey." Like
But you have
so
done the most, so I'm not
no, I
surprised.
haven't done fucking anything in so long. Like that's the thing. Like I feel like I just chill a lot, but
What do
at
you mean
least
you haven't done anything? You're literally doing me right now.
yeah.
That's a
But like
lot. I'm a lot of woman.
that's fair. But like this podcast like to me feels significant and cool and relevant and worthwhile, but it's not like I don't know, like a public thing that like lots of people care about. Like some people do, but like it's just different work feels different, I guess. And
Mm,
like this to me just feels like a cool personal project that like is yeah, it's a very personal thing. The people I talk to, the things I talk about and that
mm.
are yeah, so like I don't know, this doesn't necessarily it is definitely a hell of a lot of work creating all of this, but it doesn't necessarily feel like work the same way as other things do and like
As other things. Yeah. I
yeah.
think you're someone that enjoys engaging other people. You want to listen to people's stories. And that's probably someone you've always been all your life.
Yeah, listening to
Don't
stories is
allow
the
don't
thing.
allow like the whole thing of like listenership and all this other nonsense to stain this for you, you
I mean,
know?
if I did, we wouldn't be
You
talking. Like,
hmm, do
if I
not.
was worried about the success or popularity or whatever of this podcast, like, it wouldn't be here. Because
Hmm,
podcasting, the reality of it is that, like, unless you are being super commercial and, like, talking to, like, super big names,
big
like
artists. Yeah.
yeah, like you're not going to get the listenership that you maybe deserve. And to me,
Hmm.
like it doesn't fucking matter because I'm literally doing the thing I want to do. Like, how much better does it get?
And how many lessons have you taught me just like through this interaction, you know? How many things have you made me realize about myself that I wasn't even aware of? And I feel like that's like the biggest and best thing you could ever be in the world. Someone that impacts people's lives like that. Whether it's just me as Fortune Shumba, some other like trans kid from like my hood who, is probably gonna stumble on this one day and listen to this conversation and feel like they are validated, you know?
Yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
beauty of this.
that's kind of why I do it, is so that these
Mm,
stories are out there, so that in, 10, 15, 20 years time, people can look back and go, these are the stories of this time. These are the people who were doing things, and here are the things they
mm,
were doing, and here's how they were impacted. And yeah,
mm.
that's, to
It's
me, this is going to be like a cool little time capsule.
it's an absolute pleasure for me. It's an honor to be part of this. I can't thank you enough. It means the world to be given a platform as a trans woman to share my experience and my story. And I hope this opens, doors for other people like me to be given the platform to share their stories, because it makes a world of difference just speaking about your existence and your experience and feeling heard. So thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing so openly. Cool.
Okay. Oh, is this
I'm
the
gonna
part where we start
yeah.
crying and then
I'm
it's
gonna
getting too soapy?
I'm gonna hit the stop and then we can cry.